Mr. Speaker, in 1999, the Supreme Court ruled that courts in Canada have to recognize the background and culture of Aboriginal people who appear in courts. Manitoba, under the NDP, is backward with respect to the Gladue reports and courts. Indeed, in Saturday's Winnipeg Free Press, Justice Monan says, the NDP have created a situation where there is, and I quote, either a systemic disregard or a systemic impossibility to provide what is required for judges to comply with the dictates of the Supreme Court. I ask the Minister of Justice, what is he going to do to begin showing respect for the Gladue process in Manitoba?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, since the Supreme Court ruled in the Gladue case, that is a possibility of sentencing in every case where it's an Aboriginal person who faces a custodial sentence. Those Gladue reports do occur in Manitoba. It's part of the pre-sentencing process that will continue. What I can tell the member for River Heights is that in Manitoba we have many other means to deal with these issues. We have Aboriginal healing circles. We have provincial court judges who actually cede ground to elders committees who meet with Aboriginal people where appropriate to find solutions outside of our traditional justice system, to use a process that has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Mr. Speaker, and yet, as Judge Fred Sandu has said, and I quote, the Gladue process outcomes in Manitoba are rendered generally weak and ineffective due to a lack of resourcing to put Gladue principles into action in a manner that inspires confidence both by the court and the public. Mr. Speaker, I've been at numerous meetings over the last decade where Gladue processes have been said to show better outcomes than the status quo, which has been so strongly supported by this NDP government. MKO Grand Chief David Harper is also strongly supportive of Gladue courts. I ask the Minister of Justice, when will the first Gladue court finally be operational in our province?
Mr. Speaker, every court in the province of Manitoba is a Gladue court. That's right. Every judge can receive a Gladue report which contains particular information about the individual's background if that is an Aboriginal person who's facing a sentence. That is the case every place the provincial court sits, every place the Queen's Bench sits. I have had the chance, though, to meet with elders, to meet with court staff, to meet with people in communities such as Wew'suwet'en First Nation, which has a very successful elders committee which supports the court, which provides offenders with different options to try and find traditional ways of dealing with these cases. I've sat with the elders at Peguis First Nation. I've traveled up to Fisher River First Nation to hear different communities and their alternatives and their ways of dealing with situations of this type. So certainly, Probation Service is going to continue to work.
Order, please. The minister's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to hear that the minister has such a different perspective than so many others. Law professor Deborah Park says, with respect to the Gladue process in Manitoba, Gladue is not being implemented in any sort of systemic way. There just doesn't seem to be a culture of it being implemented, and there hasn't been any real push to do it. 6 other provinces and 2 territories already have proper Gladue courts functioning and are much further along than Manitoba. I ask the Minister of Justice, when will he provide the resources and the push to ensure Gladue is implemented properly as the Supreme Court ruled 14 years ago, so that the Manitoba justice system can be more effective and can be up to date?
Well, I'm not sure that the member for River Heights fully understands what a Gladue report is. The Gladue case tells us that it's necessary, when it's an Aboriginal individual who's being sentenced, that the pre-sentence report should take into account a number of principles which are set out in the Gladue case. That is why I said in my last answer, Mr. Speaker, every court in Manitoba is a Gladue court. Every single court in this province. We've added additional resources to probation services to make sure those pre-sentence reports are completed in a timely and a complete way. And I will acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, that certainly there are times when the timely completion of pre-sentence reports can be a problem, but that's because our probation officials take that process very seriously. They're aware of the Gladue case, they're aware of our obligations, and we'll continue to add resources.
Order, please. The minister's time has expired.